Here. I was at Fuller Theological Seminary, got my PhD in clinical psychology there and my master's in theology. When I was a student at Calvin, I wanted to study both theology and psychology. There were very few programs in the country, and Fuller was one of the better ones, so that's where I decided to go. Actually, I went to Calvin, but as Randy knows, and I was afraid he was going to tell this story because he reminds me of it often. When I arrived at Calvin, we lived on the same floor, and our RA went down to Randy, and Aaron Westra was his roommate, and said, "Hey, have you gotten a load of the Californian at the end of the hall?" Because I grew up in Southern California, so when we returned to Fuller, or when we got to Fuller, I returned to California. We lived in Pasadena, but I grew up in, for those that are familiar with the LA area, there is a Dutch community just south of the city, Bellflower, Artesia. I grew up in Cerritos, which is in that same little area, that little burb. I did not go to the Christian school there. I went to the public high school, but found my way to Calvin. Our family was part of the Lakewood, Long Beach Christian Reformed Church. For any of those that have been out in Southern California, that's where I grew up. Bellflower, yep, that's where I grew up, in that area. When I was a kid, that sounds so old when I say things like this. Lisa can't even believe this, but when I was a kid, the whole area, it was called Dairy Valley, and the whole area was filled with orange groves and cows. Orange County in those days actually were orange trees. And I sound really old. And when I say to Lisa, this was all farming, she just shakes her head and says, that's impossible. And I go, it really is. In my lifetime, it has gone from farming and a very rural community to a very, very suburban place. The sprawl of Los Angeles goes on forever now. So that's a little bit about me. We don't have time to go around. We only have 45 minutes. So the way I'm going to get to know you all a little bit is to hear, I first want to hear what when you even come to this class, what do you think of with relaxation? Just throw out some ideas. What does it mean to be relaxed? When and where are you relaxed? Where's that? Gardening. Gardening can be very relaxing. And it's not, for some people, now I'm not a weed person. My wife actually loves to pull the weeds, and she actually gets relaxed on that. I find that frustrating. That's a stressful thing for me. So this is, again, where we're going to go with what's one person's state of relaxation, maybe another person's actual stressor. So gardening is one. Some people will mention being in the woods, camping, very relaxing. What's that? By the water, exceedingly popular. By the beach, listening to the waves. By a lake, by a stream. Those are a campfire, watching fire. Fire is another very relaxing activity. Dancing can be relaxing, and we'll get to that in a minute. But it can be relaxing. Although I'm gonna actually make a funny story about dancing here in just a moment. What are some others as I get to, what's that? Being on the water, like on a boat or just sailing. We took sailing lessons when we were in Seattle, and it was just wonderful to learn that art of being on the water. That can be so relaxing. Listening to music, yes. Well, we're going to incorporate some of these as we try to tackle this concept of relaxation. And the first news I have to break to you all is that the idea of relaxation, the idea that you can be in a relaxed state all the time, is a myth. It's a great, big, huge lie. And the idea that I could give you 5 or 10 techniques and you could walk out of here in 45 minutes and not have any more stress in your life, if somebody tells you that, they're lying to you. It is a con. There is no stress. That doesn't exist. We want it to. We want that vacation to be stress-free, and only to find that maybe they lost our luggage. We want I know we've struggled with this sometimes. We'll go away, even with our kids, and we think, oh, it's just going to be relaxing the whole time, and then for whatever reason, that's the time that they start fighting. They're with the relaxing time on the beach. And so this idea that you can just go someplace or do something and be relaxed for the rest of your life probably is not going to happen on this side of eternity. And there's lots of reasons for that. There's even physiological reasons for that, and I'll explain some of that. The only way you can do that is, and I'm going to mention one of my wife's favorite musicals. Wicked is one of her favorite musicals. I don't know how many have seen the musical, or the movie came out last year. This November is going to be the next release of the next musical. But there is a character in that movie, or in that play. His name is Fiyero. And he sings a wonderful song called Dancing Through Life. Let me just read some of the lyrics of that song. Dancing through life, I'm not going to sing it. Dancing through life, skimming the surface, gliding where turf is smooth. Life is more painless, especially for the brainless. Why think too hard when it's running so smooth? Dancing through life, no need to tough it. When you sloth it off as I do, nothing matters. No, nothing really matters. It's just life. So keep dancing through. The only way you can get through life with no stress is to sing that song and dance through life. And I love this line. Life's more painless for the brainless. So how can you remove all the stress in your life? Dance and be brainless. And not that dancing can't be a relaxing, a wonderful thing, but you get my point here with Fiyero. Dancing can be somebody's relaxing, as long as it's not just avoidance. Like, I'm just going to avoid all the stressors of my life and pretend they don't exist. I'm just going to go dance. And if you watch the character in the movie or in the play, Fiyero, even he can't live by this song. The plot develops. I'm not going to give away the plot, especially for those who haven't seen it, but he has to actually take on the stressors of life. Because nobody, if you're alive and you have a brain, you actually have stress. So let me kind of give, I don't want to get too technical here. I do want to read this, because I just thought, as I was preparing for this, I thought, I'm going to a church, I want to make sure that I include some scripture. So here's something I found that I thought was so interesting, because scripture actually is reinforcing what I'm saying, or what I'm saying is reinforced in scripture. Let's turn that around. In Mark 6:31, these are Jesus' words. Then, because so many people were coming and going that they did not even have a chance to eat, he, Jesus, said to them, "Come with me by yourselves to a quiet place and get some rest." Have you ever been so busy that you forgot to eat? Sometimes we get so busy that we forget, or we don't even have time to eat. That is something I hear. I was just so busy today, I didn't even have a chance to get anything to eat. And this happened to the disciples, and Jesus said, stop. Come with me to a quiet place, and let's get some rest. That's what we're going to be talking about today. How do you stop and get some rest? The way Jesus even encouraged his disciples to do so. So to start, we have to kind of talk about this thing called stress. So I want you to imagine a graph here, and I'm going to point it out with my two axes. The axes, again, are the y and x axes. Believe me, I'm not going to go much more detailed than this. But here's the x axis, and that is stress. And over here, going up and down, is performance. And what happens with stress and performance, this is actually it's been replicated so many times, they actually call it a psychological law now. But basically what happens is, the more stress we get, the higher our performance goes. There's a line. Way down here at the bottom, if you have no stress, you have no performance. You're not doing well. You're not doing much. You're Fierro, dancing through life, not accomplishing a thing. And that line keeps going up. More stress, more performance, more stress, more performance, more stress, more performance. And then something amazing happens. We reach our, what we call, peak performance point. And we've all crossed that line, because guess what happens once we go past the peak performance? Anyone have a guess? We crash. In test, I teach at Calvin, I see it all the time with students. They prepare, they get so anxious about it, and what happens on the actual day of the test? Their mind goes blank, they actually get so anxious, and their performance goes way down. I remember the days when Randy used to practice at Calvin, because I've known him just that long, and he would practice and practice and practice his music, his organ. And he would prepare for a performance, and he needed enough stress to do well. But if he pushed beyond that point, what happened to Randy's performance? Down it went. We see this in sports. The big game. The pressure's on. Is he going to handle it? Pressure, 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 pressure. And sometimes, boy, it hits just the right place, right? Right game, big game, peak performance, played better than ever. But we've also seen those star athletes crash, because they push that stress beyond. And it happens in every area of our lives. It happens even with me right now. I let the stress of even coming and talking, and I always get a little bit stressed when I talk in front of people. And if I got really, really stressed and think, Randy and Kathy are going to be there, and oh, Randy's known me forever, and all I can think about is, and I get all tongue-tied and I forget my concepts, my performance is going to go down, because I'm getting too stressed. And that has been replicated so much that psychologists actually call it a law. Now, there are some physiological reasons for this. And again, I don't want to get too technical, but to talk about what we do with it, we have to talk about our sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. Now, that's a really easy thing to try to explain to you all. But let me try. There is a part of our nervous system, part of our brain, that actually, it's called the autonomic nervous system. And the autonomic system is divided into two parts, parasympathetic and sympathetic. And think of it this way. It's like a light switch. And God designed us. This is quite amazing how God designed us. Think about how all the organs in your body function together. When there is an emergency, we talk about fight or flight. That's a common thing in stress. When we come up to an emergency, our brain sends out signals, and through the sympathetic nervous system, it says, all systems go. All systems prepare. Get ready to fight. Get ready to run. Get ready to freeze. The whole body works together in one way. It's amazing when you think about it. The lungs get to say, hey, I'm going to sleep in this morning, while the heart will take care of it, but the lungs are going to stay asleep. That's not how the body works at all. It's instantaneous. Boom. If you've ever been, I don't know, scared by something, your whole body reacts instantaneously. That's your parasympathetic nervous system saying, boom. That's the sympathetic. The parasympathetic is the other part of the light switch, the off button. And our bodies actually, just like a light switch, can turn off. And the parasympathetic nervous system turns every major organ off except for one. And this is so interesting when we think about relaxation. Guess what system actually turns on with our parasympathetic nervous system? see where we are. What's the time told, Randy? I know, I just want to, about a half hour. Okay, good. So here's one of the secrets, and if you go to any relaxation, stress management class, relaxation training, you're going to hear about the importance of breathing. And it has to do with this sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. Because, and I teach my clients this all the time who are anxious, if you're having a panic attack, I'll tell them one of the most important things to do right now is breathe. Because guess what happens when we breathe? Especially if it's a deep, relaxing breath. We turn that light switch off. We engage our parasympathetic nervous system. By breathing deep, we actually tell the whole body it's time to relax. And remember, God designed us that the whole system works together. It's not like once you start breathing deep, the heart can say, I don't want to relax. It's all or nothing. It's one of the few places in our body that actually work all or nothing. There is a lot of places that are on a continuum in our body, but that's not how the parasympathetic nervous system works. It's all or nothing. Either you're engaged or you're not engaged. The body is either fight or flight or freeze, or you're in rest and digestion. You can't be in both. And so breathing becomes this incredible tool, and that's why everyone will tell you the most important thing to do, and I hope that's one of the takeaways that you take from today, is the importance of breathing. But there's some other things that we want to focus on as well. But we want to make sure that you guys know how to breathe. So that's the first thing that I'm just going to do it the way I teach my clients. And there's lots of breathing techniques, but I want to simplify it, especially for today. And the easiest way to know if you're breathing, and if we have some singers in here, they already know this. But you put your hand on your belly button, and I call it belly button breathing. Right now, my belly button is not moving. I am not breathing from my diaphragm. But if I breathe in, fill it like a balloon. Fill it, it's moving. Now push it out just like a balloon. One, two, three, breathe in. Out. That, if you're doing that, I have just engaged my parasympathetic nervous system. My body started to go into relaxation mode because my sympathetic nervous system is saying, oh, we're in deep breathing. And so it's a very, very vital part of relaxation is that deep, deep breathing. It's how, the reason a soloist knows this, it's how much air they know they need for an aria. They fill that diaphragm up, and they're very, very good at it. I don't have to teach this to my musically inclined clients. I just have to say, use your diaphragmatic breathing. Because that breathing, and you know, today I was realizing, while I was in service today, because I've often believed that worship is a relaxing experience. And one of the reasons I believe worship is a relaxing experience is because we sing. We sing. And singing takes diaphragmatic breathing to reach those notes. Lisa and I were laughing because at one point in our journey, we went to a Methodist church, and in our Methodist church, we never sang all the verses, ever, ever. I can't remember one time we ever sang all the verses. So we were laughing. Now we don't go to Methodist church anymore, but we were laughing and we thought, oh, we sing all the verses. Because actually the church we go to now actually does sing all the verses. And the poetry, I actually believe in that, because many of the hymns are actually poetry, and you should be singing all the verses because of the poetry. But to sing 6 verses takes a lot of air. And so you're relaxing. I don't know if you've ever thought about this, but you're using your parasympathetic nervous system to just even sing in church. You're engaging. And we're going to actually talk more about how thinking about God or worship can actually be part of our relaxation. So I am going to give basically 3 ways, and we've already talked about the first one. There are 4 that I came up with, but you'll have to invite me back to talk about the 4th one. But I'm going to give at least a teaser on this. And that is, one of the ways that we can engage our parasympathetic nervous system is in healthy relationships. But as I was preparing for this, I went, there is no way that I can also talk about relaxation and healthy relationships in 45 minutes. But research has shown that we relax when we're with people that we feel safe with. Our cortisol levels drop, our breathing is better, our muscle tension goes down. And so one of the ways that you can engage your parasympathetic nervous system is to have a good friend, to have a support, to have the care of a loved one. That actually lowers our stress. And there are things that we can do that can support and build relationships. I just don't have time to build that into today's talk. But that's the 4th one. The first one we've already gone over is breathing. And we're going to build on our breathing now when we talk about the other 2. And they kind of are related. And these are psychological words, and maybe some of you have even heard of them. They're often used on the news, or those minutes. I've been on the news to talk about, hey, how to relax, and we get like 2 or 3 minutes on the news to tell the entire audience how to relax. And so the catchwords that are really big today in this whole area are things called grounding and mindfulness. And we're going to use both those concepts, and we're going to, as Abraham Kuyper says, there isn't one square inch of this earth that Jesus doesn't say is mine. We're even going to take mindfulness back from the Buddhists and say, no, Jesus is Lord of all, even including mindfulness. This is not a discipline that is owned by the Buddhists. This is actually good stuff that we can use in our walk, in our Christian faith. So let's talk about just making sure I haven't forgotten things. Oh, this is important. I'm glad I looked. Let's talk about this a minute. We are so connected to this. This is another topic that we could have, the addiction of electronic. It's not talking with somebody, I don't think he's here now, the beginning of church, and he was talking about his 8-year-old granddaughter being terribly, terribly anxious. Oh, there he is, yes. And I said, it's actually really sad that we are seeing anxiety raise at levels that we've never seen. And I really, again, it seems like a no-brainer to me, but we are getting way too tied to these devices. And I am not anti-cell phone. Matter of fact, it occurred to me today, as I was preparing for this morning when I was thinking about my cell phone, I thought, one of the ways, when we talk about grounding and mindfulness, we want to be intentional. And these phones can be incredibly helpful in being intentional. Here's an example. And I actually, one of my favorite hymns, not a coincidence, is Beautiful Savior, which we sang this morning. And if I'm really, really stressed, and I want to ground myself in a hymn that I know is going to help bring me to a very relaxed place and know that I'm that God is in control and that God's a beautiful Savior, I can Google, put it in, arrive at whatever version I want, from contemporary to the choir can sing it for me. And I can sit and listen to that. That is an amazing, beautiful thing that our cell phones can bring to us. However, most of us aren't using our cell phones. And without going on a big speech about cell phones or electronic devices, my biggest thing is, are you a passive user of your phone, or are you an active participant with your phone? Because when I talk about grounding and I talk about mindfulness, you have to be in the driver's seat. Most of us use our phone. I do. Scroll. And what are we doing? We're hoping that the phone somehow is going to entertain us. I'm bored. And the phone is going to get my attention and get me excited. Maybe somebody texts me. Oh, look, I can respond. On and on and on and on. And I'm a passive receiver from the entertainment that somebody else is sending my way. And we do this with television, and we do this with movies, and we do this with lots of things in our society where we become passive observants to our relaxation, and we think that works. And actually, research says no, unless you are an active participant in the relaxation, you are just setting yourself up to be more bored. And I know that when I sit after a while and I catch myself and think, gosh, I just spent 15 minutes on my phone, I am no more relaxed than I was 15 minutes ago. But if I did what I said a moment ago, where I look up beautiful Savior, Google it in, listen to it, take the energy, take that, listen to it, and say, gosh, that version isn't quite right, so I'm going to even play a different version, one I really like, and play it again. And then I'm just in that place where I'm like, wow. Then I can actually feel the relaxation because I'm actively using this for relaxation. And so I just want to really encourage you. The phone can be a wonderful tool if you are the active person that's pursuing, rather than the passive person that's expecting the phone or whatever messages are coming on. And of course, when we talk about the stress of this world, there's another part of our brain that talks about, it's called our limbic system. And I was going to go into this, and I thought there's just no way everyone's going to get glass-eyed. But the limbic system is our fight or flight or freeze response. It tells the body, uh-oh, there's danger. And so when we're stressed, and maybe you've been at this place before, when we're really stressed at that limbic level, it's like you got the news that somebody died, and you can't even catch your breath. Or something terrible like 9/11, and you just can't even imagine. It takes your breath away. Or you're so angry about something you're ready to fight. Or you're so scared about something that you're ready to flee. That's that limbic part of our brains. And even in limbic stress, if we use our breathing and we use these other techniques, this grounding and this mindfulness, we're going to engage our parasympathetic nervous system. That's another one of the takeaways, I hope. If you can just remember that, turn the light switch off by using some grounding techniques. And you know what? This church is filled with grounding techniques. So let me start with just this experiment. And this is what I'm getting at with grounding and mindfulness. It's being very intentional about your senses. And so I'll have my students when I've done this in class, and I definitely do it with my clients, but I'll give them this assignment, and you can take this afternoon in your quiet time. Notice 5 things right now that you can see. Notice 4 things you can feel. Notice 3 things that you can hear. Notice two things you can smell. Notice one thing you can taste. Maybe you can still taste the cake. At its simplest form, that's what grounding and mindfulness is all about. It's being intentional about your senses. And this worship service this morning was very intentional. And this church, Lisa and I went into your garden, and we get used to things that we just see every day. But that garden is beautiful. And to be intentional, to say, you know what? I'm going to go and sit in that garden. And I'm going to see 5 things I can see. 4 things I can hear. Or 4 things I can feel. 3 things I can hear. 2 things I can smell. And 1 thing that I can touch. You are grounding yourself in your senses. And by grounding yourself in your senses, you actually are engaging your parasympathetic nervous system. You are slowing the body down. We talk about something called mindful walking. And I'm going to give 2 examples. I'm going to just kind of walk. Lisa said, it's good that I don't have the handheld because I walk around a lot and move my hands a lot when I'm talking. So I'm just going to demonstrate non-mindful walking. The first one is, I know I have got to get to that. I'm just going to say my meeting is right there at the back by the doorway there. And now I know I'm just even a couple minutes late. And how am I going to walk into that meeting, right? Very, very deliberate, very, very fast. Made it. That's not mindful walking. That's walking that actually is pretty stressed. My pace was fast. Where I needed to be was very intentional. And of course, everybody needs to have days and times and places where we need to get someplace. But that's not mindful walking. Here's another example of non-mindful walking. It's the other extreme. No real purpose, no real direction, just kind of floundering again. Fierro, dancing through life. Mindful walking is saying, I'm going to walk to that place and I'm going to pay attention to my senses. What does it feel like? Oh, the ground is hard. What do my shoes feel like? Oh, there's a step. Look at that. God gave me the ability still to be able to walk up steps. I know some people that actually is a really big deal. Wow, thank you, Jesus. I can walk up a step. I've never been here before. I love how there's no corners. And Randy was describing how the sanctuary actually is intentional. The architecture is intentional. Isn't it beautiful? Hey, you know what? When's the last time I really looked at that beautiful sculpture? And Randy was telling me about that was designed on purpose. And there's lots of symbolism in there. I'm going to take just a moment. I'm going to really enjoy that. Yeah. I'm not walking deliberately to my meeting. I'm not just meandering about. I'm being very intentional about what I'm doing, and I'm engaging my senses. Mindful walking is a discipline. It's a practice that you can do anywhere. Think about some of the places in your life. Think about, again, some of you said being out in nature. Mindful walking is a wonderful thing to do out in the woods. Not just a hike for the sake of a hike. Hey, I got 4 miles in. Walk with intention of hearing the rustling of the leaves on your feet. the trees, the colors, the birds, the sky. And when you do that, you actually are engaged with your parasympathetic nervous system. You're turning that light switch off, and you're allowing your body to relax. And we need so much more of that. And I was so reminded of your worship service this morning and how, matter of fact, after one of my lectures, a student, it's a paper, it's probably one of the better student papers I've ever read, and he wrote a paper on the psychological benefits of Christian worship. And he actually was able to tie some of these concepts into our worship services and how mindful it can be. And I'm not saying that I am not like the perfect person in the pew, where every prayer and every meaning of everything is, I'm catching it all. But what a wonderful weekly opportunity we have to slow down our lives and be mindful, to listen, to hear, to sing, to think about God, to be thankful. These are all things, again, that in this crazy, crazy world allows us to flip that light switch and allows us to relax. Now, this is a discipline, and I do not want to make light of it. Mindfulness is tied to, like I said a moment ago, to the Buddhist faith. We have to be honest about that. It really comes from the Buddhist tradition, and maybe you've even heard that. And I've even heard some Christians say, well, I could never do yoga, or I could never do any of the mindful meditation because of its Buddhist roots. And I get that, and I understand that. But Christians, and what it misses sometimes, is that we have our own meditative history, wonderful, rich meditative history. And we can take back that mindfulness. And when I'm saying mindfulness, I am not trying to make that easy or sideswipe the reality that some people, and maybe you've seen it in movies or read books or even on the news, where you see a Buddhist monk or a group of Buddhist monks that have been sitting in the same position for 8 hours. That takes incredible discipline. The kind of discipline that is more than what I'm talking about. I realize that the mindfulness that I'm talking about is not the same that we're talking about, that you can actually sit and breathe for 8 hours. But we don't need breathing for 8 hours to relax. Matter of fact, a mindful walk is just a matter of your thoughts. It's just a matter of saying, you know what? I'm going to be mindful in my walk today. And you can do this in the office. I encourage some of my clients, you know what? The next time you walk from your office to get a cup of coffee or get a drink of water or go to the bathroom, notice something you've never noticed before or that you haven't really paid attention to. What's the color of the wall? What does the carpet feel like? Are you grateful for your job? Who are the people as you pass their offices that you really like? Do you pray for them for a moment? And so now you have this mindful walk to what would have been just to get a cup of coffee, and you actually are relaxing. And you're in a better place to go back to your desk and start again. We can do this in our homes. How many of us, when we walk around, really notice the furnishings and the pictures? You have pictures? Randy said, one of your miracles in life is to have grandchildren. As you're walking along, you know there's a picture of your grandchild. You know what? I could just use a boost right now. I'm going to go and look at my grandkids. Just for a moment. And I'm going to smile, and I'm going to give them a blessing. I'm going to pray for them for a moment. And in doing that, I've engaged my parasympathetic nervous system. I've shut that light switch off. And so mindful walking is a wonderful practice that we can practice anywhere, at any time. Now, to get you to really practice this discipline and really zeroing in on your senses, and this is what we're going to end with, and I think we're pretty good on time. It's time. Okay. Okay, so let me just do this really, really quick. Open your package of gummies, bears. And just take one. They're very small. Just take one. Don't put it in your mouth yet. Randy's already put it in his mouth. You have to get another one, Randy. Hold it. Look at it. Have you ever looked at the face of a gummy bear? Look at its ears. Look at its nose. It's pretty small, isn't it? Have you squished it? Squish it. Roll it around in your hand. What does that feel like? A gummy bear. You're being mindful of gummy bear. Some of you already smelled it. Each color has a different smell. Smell the gummy bear. We're slowing life down now that you're even looking at a little teeny tiny gummy bear. Now put it in your mouth, but don't chew. Just let it sit on your tongue. What does that feel like? What's a gummy candy feel like on your tongue? Now take that first chew. Chew it around. Feel that sensation of chewing. Just by slowing it down. Now, of course, eating, as we started with when we talked about the parasympathetic nervous system, again, God's great design, eating is a place that we're not supposed to eat fast and on the run. Eating really is supposed to be a community event where we take our time. Think about savoring something, savoring a wonderful meal. Lisa and I had a wonderful meal last night with Randy and Kathy. And we savored our food. We talked about it. We all got our own desserts because we're all bad dessert sharers. And we didn't want to share it with everyone else. We want to have our own so we can savor our own. And unbelievable. Three Cats is the name of the restaurant. If you've never been there, you have to have their butterscotch creme brulee? Butterscotch creme brulee. Unbelievable. Talk about a savoring dish. Savor every bite. Hit that hard sugar shell. Crack! And then you see all that break apart, and then you scoop, and it's soft and sugary and hard, and you put that in your mouth. Again, by savoring a gummy bear, by looking at its face, you're engaging in that parasympathetic nervous system. It sounds so simple, but it's so hard. It's so hard to live mindfully. It is so hard to engage in all the beautiful things that God gives us every day. It's so difficult to just say, you know what, I'm going to slow down life. Yes, I still have to make it to that meeting, but how do I make it to that meeting? How do I do my chores? How do I do my gardening? How do I? And that, believe it or not, is going to lead you to that relaxed life. The closest that you can get to that relaxed life is a mindful life. All right, let's open it up for some questions. Yes, Randy.
How do you use social media?
How do I use it? I use it sparingly. Personally, especially, I don't always stick to this because sometimes my limbic system gets stirred, but I try very hard to make only positive posts and only try to read positive posts so that I don't get caught up in other people's stress. Because if somebody needs prayer, I just don't think social media is always the best way to go and get prayer. And I don't think people really are asking for prayer. Sometimes they are, but a lot of times people are just venting on social media. And unfortunately, a lot of it is ugly. And then it just ruins my mood for the day, because now I'm carrying their burden, and not in a prayerful way. Now I'm just carrying their garbage that they've dumped. And so I try very, very hard to speak positively, so I share, and I do use Facebook. My kids tease me. They say, yeah, you're definitely in the older generation, because young people don't use Facebook, Dad. You guys share pictures of cats and your grandkids, and so I do. Lisa and I do use that, and we try very hard to share pictures of things we've done, exciting opportunities we've had, things that we're thankful for. So I try very hard to keep it in that place, both in trying to receive it and give it out. But again, during this, in all the stress of the world, sometimes you see someone's post and you get mad and you respond, and then I believe you have to ask for forgiveness for that, and then the Holy Spirit convicts you of that, and you bring that into your confession. But I think Facebook is, and I really limit my amount of scrolling. Sometimes I don't. I have to be honest. Lisa's going to call me out on it, but I really try not to just sit all morning long, or I'm not doing anything this morning, and just sit and scroll. I really try to limit it. And I also use my search button to find out what are the people that I like to follow, what are their latest posts. And so that's so then I'm just zeroing in on their posts, not just what random thing may be on there. So it's a tough one. Social media is a tough one. Other thoughts, questions? Yes.
I have served as a retired preschool teacher in Montessori. I've been a teach Montessori, but I would work there in large capacity for 7 years. And what you have just described as mindfulness can be summed up in watching the typical preschool child left to themselves. They examine.
Yes.
So much, and I'm also a proponent of Fred Rogers' work.
Yes.
And so many of his little songs for children.
Correct.
For parents.
Yes.
And all those things that he is, it's just that Fred, what you have done is just affirm what we really need.
Correct. Correct. And when you think about a typical 3-year-old, they don't feel a lot of the stressors that we walk around with. And part of that, now there's lots of reasons for that. They don't understand some of the adult responsibilities and all of that. But they certainly spend their days examining every little thing and learning. They're just like sponges for information. And they just love it. And I'm somewhat of a geek. I'm a lifelong learner. I want to retire next to a college so I can keep taking college courses even until I'm, what else can I learn today? That's just who I am. And so that part of soaking in is just part of kind of who I am. But maybe it's that 3-year-old in me that just thinks there's something to learn, to savor, to take in, and there's so much. And it's a mindset. It really is. And I get it. Taking a class, when you're taking a class at 65, that's really different than when you're taking a class. Taking one of my students just took an exam this week, and some of them didn't do so well, and I have to give them back their tests on Tuesday. And they're not going to be happy about that because they didn't do so well. It's easier for me now at this age, at my place, to say, just keep learning, keep trying. For them, there are consequences, and that's hard. There's stress. An exam is stressful. So it's tough. I don't want to make this too easy either. Yes.
One of the things that wasn't mentioned about relaxing, and we could also be mindfulness, is reading a good book.
Yes, you're right. Reading, because using our imagination to go off into another place, and it's very intentional. You have to be the person who is reading, and you have to let your imagination go with wherever the author is taking you. And so again, reading is not a passive sport or a passive activity. You have to be engaged. And so reading a good book, Or even if you listen, because sometimes we'll do audiobooks, or one of our kind of dreams that we haven't yet realized yet is to actually have, instead of watching TV, actually listen to audiobooks and sit and we've gotten close a couple of times, and one of these days we're actually going to try it. But that's that same idea, because listening to a book is different. It's a different activity than just, again, passively watching the screen. Yes?
I like your illustration of the X and Y axis.
Yes.
I attribute that to people that I have known that have been very, very active throughout their careers. And they retire, and they sit in front of the television, and they're dead. Certainly active.
Correct. Correct. I could have really gone into more examples of that X and Y axis. Here's one of the dangers. One is exactly what you described, and actually I've seen many retired, and often it's men, but many retired people who retirement is just not the retirement they dreamed it was going to be. They find themselves bored, they find themselves restless, they find themselves without anything to do because they counted on the pressure and the stress of work to provide them that optimal level of stress so that they could perform or have some sort of, meaningful activity in that day. And so what they have to find is some activity that's going to be stressful enough. Because if being a bored, retired person is stressful. It doesn't help. Now I'm sitting here all alone, bored, nothing to do. It's not relaxing. You're not in a good mindful place. And so yes, that is so true about the X and Y axes. And then the other thing I didn't cover with that is that if you keep pushing yourself beyond your peak performance, which some of us do, we actually set ourselves up to be burned out. If you just keep driving through that like it's a stop sign and you're not going to stop for it, and you just keep going and going and going and going, day after day after day after day after day, job you hate and it's stressful and you don't get any reward from it, and you just keep going and you keep going and you keep going and you're not paying attention to your body, eventually your body is going to tell you, I don't want to do this anymore. And you get burned out.
So you talked a lot about relaxation and so on, but you just used the phrase optimum level of stress.
Right.
So on that axis, there's a point that is the sweet spot.
Correct.
And you haven't talked about, well, what does the optimum level of stress look like? And where do people aim when it comes to performing?
This is such a complicated question because the axis actually moves, depending on all kinds of variables, including even your mood for the day. Some of us some days just have more of a cushion and our optimal stress level is higher. I had a good night's sleep, I ate well, I had a good morning with my family, and I'm in a better place today. And so my optimal level is a little bit farther out than it would be if I didn't sleep well last night, and the kids were screaming when I left the house, and my wife was angry with me because I had to leave early for a meeting, and now I'm going to that meeting, and I get to the meeting, and I don't know, I'm getting chewed out at the job, and by 7:15 I'm already done for the day. And so the optimal point, I would love it if you could just say, hey, this is my optimal point. Every day, and possibly every moment of the day, that optimal point is moving. And so some days we can handle more stress, some days we can't handle hardly any stress. And we just have to recognize that it's a moving. Oh, I'm sorry, it's time out. So we are done for the day. So, all right. Thank you for having me.